For 20 whole years, everyone around the world thought that Marshall Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty were the perfect couple on TV. People loved watching them together. But behind all those famous sweet looks they gave each other, something much darker and sadder was hiding. Every single time the cameras stopped filming their scenes, James Arness would quietly walk away from the set without saying even one word to Amanda Blake. What all the fans watching at home thought was him being shy and sweet was actually him being cold and mean to her. The people who worked on the show noticed what was happening, but nobody had the courage to say anything about it out loud. The big problem between them was so serious and went so deep that the TV network CBS spent many years trying to hide the truth from everyone because they wanted to protect the huge success that the show Gunsmoke had created. Let's find out what really happened, and you won't believe the shocking things that went on behind the scenes. When Amanda Blake first joined the cast of Gunsmoke back in 1955, she was only 26 years old. She felt confident and strong, and she was determined and ready to make her mark and become famous in a type of TV show that was mostly controlled and run by men. James Arness was 32 years old at that time, and he was still walking with a limp because of an injury he got during the war, and he had just been specially chosen and handpicked by the famous movie star John Wayne to play the role of Marshall Dillon on the new show. At the very beginning, when they first started working together, their connection and friendship seemed natural and effortless, like it came easily to both of them. She really admired and looked up to his quiet kind of strength and toughness. He respected and appreciated her fire, her passion, and her strong personality. They worked together side by side for 12 long hours every single day on the set, and they would often keep rehearsing and practicing their lines long after all the other crew members had finished work and wrapped up for the day and gone home. But the special chemistry and connection that made them become America's most favorite pair of characters on television soon started to turn into something else. It became a competition between them. Blake very quickly became someone that fans were drawn to like a magnet. Thousands and thousands of letters poured in from viewers all across the country, and these letters praised her character's wit, her cleverness, and her independence and strength. The big bosses and executives at CBS Television Network began putting her in promotional photos and pictures right beside Arness, instead of putting her behind him like before. For a man like Arness, who was raised and brought up on discipline, rules and hierarchy and knowing your place, that big shift and change felt like a betrayal to him, like someone had stabbed him in the back. Rumors and whispers about creative tension and arguments started spreading around by the third season of the show. Blake had grown very close friends with the show's first director, a man named Charles Marquis Warren, and he would often rewrite and change scenes to give Kitty's character more dialogue and more lines to say. Arness saw this as favoritism, like the director was playing favorites and giving Blake special treatment. A crew member named William Lava once said years later in an interview, "You could see the change happening in Jim's face whenever Amanda got a new line to say in a scene. It wasn't jealousy exactly, it was more like he felt he'd lost control of his own world, his own show." The breaking point, the moment when things got really bad, came during a publicity photo shoot back in 1958. When the photographers working there asked the two stars to pose closely together for pictures, Arness pulled back and away at the very last moment, and people heard him muttering and saying under his breath that Kitty doesn't need the Marshal that much. Blake smiled through it all and kept her professional face on, but later she told a reporter, "It's really hard to act close and loving with someone when that person keeps building fences and walls between you." From that day forward, every single look they shared together on screen while acting carried the heavy weight of something unspoken, something they couldn't say out loud. "You don't like me anymore, do you, Jim?" she reportedly asked him one afternoon between takes while they were filming. "I like you fine," he answered back without even looking up at her, "as long as the cameras are rolling and filming." By the middle of the 1960s, the show Gunsmoke had become a juggernaut, which means it was like a giant, powerful force that couldn't be stopped. Arness had become television royalty, like a king of TV, and he was commanding and earning a salary that was higher than what most film stars in movies were making. Blake, on the other hand, and at the same time, had become the face of frontier feminism, representing strong women, and she was admired and loved by women all across America and the whole country. But all that success and fame didn't calm down the storm between them. Instead, it made it worse. It intensified it and made the problems even bigger. During the filming of the 1963 episode called Kitty's Injury, the script and story called for Dylan's character to carry Kitty's character through a burning barn that was on fire. The dangerous stunt required Arness to lift Blake up repeatedly, over and over again, while wearing a heavy costume under the intense bright studio lights that were very hot. He'd been suffering and dealing with knee pain from his old battlefield wound that he got in the war, but he refused to use a stunt double, someone else to do it for him. The first take, the first time they filmed it, went well and was fine, but when Blake asked to do another take, claiming and saying that her facial expression didn't look right to her, Arness snapped and got angry. The next time he lifted her ended with Blake slipping from his arms and hitting the ground hard with a thud. The scream that you hear in that scene, many people say, was completely real and not acting. Filming had to shut down and stop for 2 whole days. Officially, the accident was written off and explained as fatigue, as him being too tired, but a sound engineer named Ed Dunning recalled and remembered decades later. Many years after, I saw Jim walk away with that jaw set tight and his face hard. He wasn't sorry about what happened. After the incident and accident, the production managers in charge arranged and changed the schedule so that the 2 stars filmed their scenes separately whenever it was possible to do so. Their scenes together when they had to be in the same shot were blocked and planned out very carefully with more distance between them, with fewer physical interactions and touching, and with less eye contact and looking at each other. But the tension between them, ironically and strangely enough, actually made the show better to watch. Fans watching called it unresolved passion and chemistry. The crew members working there called it barely controlled fury and anger. By 1965, Arness had secured and gotten script approval, which meant he could say yes or no to what was in the scripts. Whenever Blake suggested that Dylan and Kitty should share a kiss in a scene, the idea was vetoed and shut down by him. He insisted, and kept saying it would ruin the realism of the show, make it less believable. But according to the costume designer Leah Rhodes, the real reason was his pride and ego. He couldn't give her that moment of victory. She said, he didn't want her to win anything. The bitterness and anger reached a quiet but unmistakable level that everyone could feel. The Christmas party that year was held and happened without either of them attending or showing up. Arness stayed home with his family. Blake threw her own separate dinner party for the crew members. From then on and moving forward, they lived in 2 separate versions of the same show, Gunsmoke. By the 1970s, both stars were getting older and aging, and the show Gunsmoke was running on habit and legacy, just coasting on its past success. Blake wanted her character to evolve and grow and change. She pitched an idea. She suggested a storyline, revealing and showing that Miss Kitty had once been a madam who ran a business, but then reinvented herself and started over. The idea was bold and daring. It was ahead of its time, and it would have given her character depth and layers beyond just working at the saloon. But Arness killed the pitch immediately. He shut it down right away. In a closed meeting behind doors, with the producer John Mantley, he argued and said that the revelation would destroy the Marshal's integrity and honor. Mantley sided with him and agreed, and Blake was devastated and heartbroken. Years later, she told a close friend, I wanted to tell women everywhere that Kitty was flawed, that she wasn't perfect, that she fought her way up from nothing. But Jim wanted her to stay spotless and perfect as long as he could keep her under his thumb and control. The tension turned toxic. It became poisonous and terrible. On set during filming, they rarely spoke to each other unless the cameras were rolling and filming. Stagehands and workers remembered that if one of them walked in from stage left on one side, the other one would exit right on the opposite side to avoid each other. Their professionalism and work ethic kept the show alive and going, but their connection and friendship was gone completely. A final confrontation and big argument came in late 1973 during rehearsals for an episode called The Badge. The tension, that had been simmering like a pot on low heat for years, finally cracked and broke open. Blake stood before him, standing right in front of him, with her patience completely gone and used up. "You've made her invisible, Jim," she said to him. Arness looked at her, calm on the outside but cold on the inside. To him, Kitty had stopped being just a character on a show and had started threatening the myth and legend of the Marshal himself, his character. "You made her too human," he replied back with his voice low and quiet. In that moment, the divide between them was complete and final. It was a war, a battle over who got to define and control the soul of Gunsmoke, what the show was really about. She walked out of rehearsal that day and only returned when it was time for actual filming. When the episode aired on television, fans praised and loved the intensity of their final scene together. The scene with Kitty saying goodbye to Dodge City and leaving. Viewers watching at home thought it was just good acting. The crew members knew it was a real farewell, a real goodbye. After the season wrapped up and finished, Blake resigned from the show. She quit. The network and executives begged her to reconsider and change her mind. Arness stayed silent and didn't say anything. In one of his few interviews from that year, he said, "Actors come and go. The West stays." The line became infamous and famous among fans who sensed and felt its true meaning, what he was really saying. When the show Gunsmoke finally ended in 1975, Arness retreated and pulled back from Hollywood and the entertainment world. He rarely gave interviews to reporters. He spent his time sailing along the California coast on boats, and he refused to talk about Blake at all. But whispers and rumors persisted and kept going that his silence was hiding guilt, not anger. A decade later, 10 years after, CBS brought back and revived the show for a reunion TV movie called Gunsmoke: Return to Dodge. When the producers called Arness on the phone, he agreed immediately without hesitation. When they called Blake, she hesitated and wasn't sure at first, until she learned and found out that Arness had said yes. She accepted and agreed with one condition, one rule: we film our reunion scene first, before anything else. The day of that shoot and filming, the air felt heavy with memory, with the past. The scene showed Matt finding Kitty after years and years apart, after not seeing each other. Between takes while they were filming, she tried to break the ice and make things less awkward. "Do you ever miss Dodge?" she asked him. "Only when it rains," he replied back, with his eyes fixed on the horizon in the distance, looking away. For a moment, just a brief moment, there was warmth again between them, something close to forgiveness and letting go. But when the camera rolled and started filming, the emotion turned real and genuine. Arness's hands trembled and shook slightly as he touched her arm gently. Blake's eyes filled up with tears, and she whispered her line with a catch in her voice, a break in her words. "You never came back for me." Arness didn't answer her. The silence between them was too honest, too real to be in any script. When filming ended that day, they didn't speak to each other again, not one more word. 2 years later, in 1989, Blake died and passed away from complications related to AIDS, from the disease. Arness didn't attend the memorial service or funeral, but he sent only a note, just a short message. "She was part of my life's best work." To some people reading it, it sounded cold and distant. To others, it was the closest he could come to a confession, to admitting the truth. In his later years, when he was older, Arness admitted and confessed to a friend, "We could have been close friends, but we were too much alike, both stubborn, both guarded and protective, both afraid to lose control." That private remark and comment reframed the entire story. It changed how people understood everything. The hatred wasn't pure malice or just being mean. It was pride that got poisoned by unspoken affection and feelings they never said out loud. In the end, the feud and fight between James Arness and Amanda Blake was both the curse and the secret weapon of the show Gunsmoke. Their off-screen hostility and fighting gave their on-screen chemistry a fire, a spark that could never be faked or pretended. What fans read and saw as longing and wanting each other was really frustration and anger. What felt like restraint and holding back was actually pride and ego. Yet that same pride created something unforgettable that people will never forget. Two people who were at odds, who were fighting, built one of television's most enduring relationships that lasted through time. Not through harmony and getting along, but through conflict and fighting. And when Arness finally reflected and looked back on those years shortly before his death in 2011, he told a biographer, a person writing his life story, James Houghton, "We made people believe in that world we created. Maybe because we were both trying to survive it and get through it. So maybe the question isn't why he hated her. Maybe the real question is whether he ever stopped hating her, or if something else was there all along. What do you think about all this? Did James Arness and Amanda Blake's secret war and fighting make Gunsmoke greater and better? Or did it destroy the bond and connection that could have changed television forever?"